Just a comment. Arcadis has been working on this for almost 4 years. You've reviewed at least 42,000 pages of documents, and to consolidate your
twice
that amount, to consolidate your comments, both positive and of critical nature, into 15 PowerPoint pages is pretty amazing. So thank you for the concise, focused presentation. Are there any questions of Larry? Phil?
Mr. Roth, I am reminded of why the council, in 2010, made a decision to retain your firm, and it was in part in answer to the question, everybody else in California similarly situated seemed to have been hired working on one aspect or another of the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, but your firm has not and did not. And that gave us a perspective that we really needed to balance the interest. And I'd like to congratulate you on, as Randy indicated, trying to synthesize all of this work over all this time. I do have a couple of specific questions I want to ask about.
Thank you, though, Phil. Appreciate that.
I can't resist going to page 4 and announcing that I had never thought that Larry Roth would be part of the Twitter generation in writing, and Randy informed me that W.R.T. is with regard to. Is he right, or is that merely a typographical?
No, that's with respect. Well, I think with respect to, with regard to. That's from high school geometry. I think you probably
got it. Okay.
We thank Euclid for that one.
Let me run through some basic policy questions. The Bay Delta Conservation Plan, in your finding, is generally aligned with the Delta Reform Act and the Delta Plan. My recollection is, in one of our early communication letters to BDCP comment letters from Mr. Grindstaff, the specific question was asked of Bay Delta Conservation Plan whether they are obligated to comply with a co-equal goal, and I don't recall seeing a specific answer.
Yeah, I think what they've done, if I might, Mr. Chairman, is over the course of the BDCP's development, they have acknowledged the within their goals and objectives for the project, the co-equal goals that are incorporated in the Reform Act. There's not, however, a statutory responsibility within the Reform Act that they do more than meet the specific requirements of 85320, if I'm speaking correctly. So what Larry's tried to do is look at, without expressing a legal judgment, hey, how do we think they're doing in that regard in terms of trying to fulfill the objectives of the Reform Act?
One thing I should have mentioned earlier, too, it really bears stating that, BDCP had a pretty good head of steam going when the Delta Reform Act was passed. And so a lot of their, in fairness to BDCP, they've had to retrofit some of their work to be in conformance, or to attempt to be in conformance.
Okay, well, I'll reserve the legal implications of that question, but a couple of other things that caught my attention. BDCP does specifically say that the tunnel projects in particular and operational measures will have a positive impact on water reliability, one of the co-equal goals. But you put in here it's references we have done, the council's done also, to this big gulp, little sip strategy. And one of the things that has caught my attention is, given the recent drought that we're in, and taking the largest public debate possible, it seems to me that there is no guarantee that when we get in our next drought, that water users, particularly junior water right holders, will ever accept the argument that they take cuts first and instead will demand that the system supply them with all the water they would prefer to get, thus undercutting the argument of big gulp in wet years, little sip in dry years. And I don't, it's one of those puzzles that we've always had. It's a nice slogan. I like it. I think it expresses good policy. But I can't imagine any fundamental change in arguments and discussions in the future. And doesn't that undercut the notion that most people have bought off to on the theoretical level, that you store more water in wet years and you use it slowly over time, making it essentially a drought supply to be available?
Well, there's the two sides to that issue. It's the supply side, if you will, and that's if there is water to be stored in a wet year, can we do it? And our point is that the BDCP does provide some flexibility in that. I think BDCP's own analysis, and I may not have the numbers exactly correct from memory, but right now San Luis Reservoir can be filled with current operations approximately 50% of the time, and or perhaps less, and with the proposed conveyance in BDCP, they are estimating that it could be filled more than 80% of the time. So a significant increase in the amount of water that can be stored south of Delta. Now, how that's allotted in drought, is a separate matter. I would say storing it on the one hand is important, but then how that stored water is used and allotted is a different policy issue.
And that's one of the reasons the additional south of Delta storage to supplement San Luis could be so helpful, because what we've got now is if the BDCP were added, is the opportunity for the big gulp. Mm-hmm. But without more water and storage, it's going to be hard for people to subsist on the little sip. So that's one of the reasons that this gets us partway there, contributes. It's not the whole package.
On the governance evaluation that you've done, have you any observations on whether this new within DWR, let's build the tunnel organization and structure, and forgive me, I forget what they're calling it these days, but that seemed to me to be addressed to solving the practical problems of multi-jurisdictions, in this case water contractors and multiple state agencies, of solving the problem of how you can make state agencies and water contractors more efficiently work together to complete a capital construction project, which I think is a good idea. But I did not see in that agreement any similar clarity, any similar centralization of duties and obligations for the concurrent activity, which is the environmental and habitat activity. It just is lost in this. I mean, you've civilized the organizational chart for BDCP, but it's still damned complicated, and decisions are primarily, as I understand it, are being made by water supply regulators and water contract users. And where in your judgment does the management and implementation of habitat restoration, the second co-equal goal, fit in the structure?
It's in the current documents. It's not well described, and we've been waiting for the implementation agreement to provide some detail and clarity to that. What we've read about the design and construction enterprise is just what's in the paper, which is an overview and doesn't provide much detail on that. I think that's yet to be, from our perspective, yet to be determined.
And the things that are called regulatory assurances, those arguably will come in the implementation agreement. The contract renewals to the state water project, if that proceeds, what other locations would assurances appear?
Well, the assurances will be within the permit itself, I think, and whether it'll be a 50-year permit or some fraction with options to add on. I'm sure there's a variety of ways that they could tailor it. But what's been proposed in BDCP is a 50-year permit, and that's right now the only thing that's on the table for discussion. that I'm aware of.
Do you have any information on likely regulatory assurances appearing in that process, what they would be?
No, sir, I don't.
All right, thank you.
Gloria, Larry, any questions of Larry? Okay. Then I think we completed this portion. Larry, thank you very much. You indicated early on you were backed up. It's good you were
Ably
able to,
backed up.
Yeah, ably backed up, and it was good that you were able to handle all the questions. So thank you,
thank you very
Arcadis
much.
team. Dan, help me pick an appropriate time to break for lunch.
Yeah, I think it would be. I think we had expected we would hear from the science panels after lunch, and then we'll wrap up the day with the draft comments on the EIR.
Okay, we are now going to break for lunch. We will reconvene at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. Thank you.